it's Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hi, this is Ivy Slater. Welcome to today's episode of Her Success Story. I'm thrilled to introduce you to a guest today. I had the honor and pleasure of speaking at their chapter association annual meeting. Kathy Perna is the executive director for the ISM chapter ally in New Jersey. And I know other things. So Kathy, you're going to add in. I'm just going to give a snippet here. So when we think about ISM, which I want to share with our listeners, is the Institute for Supply Management. We have never really explored much or interviewed many with backgrounds in the supply chain. And anywhere you touch corporate, it is so important to understand, know, and learn about. So Kathy, I'm thrilled to have you here and joining me today. Thank you.
Well, thank you for bringing me on today. I appreciate it.
So you've been in the supply management, supply chain career for a long time. How did this evolve for you?
Well, it's interesting because my background actually is I actually worked for ITT Avionics many moons ago. And that was actually how my career started. And I was married. We had our first child. Then I stayed home. And as I had my second child, I wanted to get back into the workforce. So, of course, everything is small steps, as they say. And I was able to get a connection from my mother-in-law to start in an office 1 day a week. And that's how I actually started into my role. At that time, it was called the National Association of Purchasing Management for the New Jersey chapter. Little by little, the person who oversaw me actually retired, and I took her position, became the office manager. And it was actually an association management group that I was in, and NAPM at that time was actually one of their clients, and I was in charge of that particular role in an office. So it's more like the office setting. So then a lot of them see my skill sets, that I actually have some pretty good skill sets. I was very good coordinating, keeping track of things, managing, sites and locations, running seminars, educational events. So then I said, let's get her out more. Let's get her to meet the members. So that's actually how it all started.
And it's so great when we hear that organizations notice people's skills and not the skills that are just the ones required to do the job, but seeing the whole person and jumping forward and seeing what's possible and creating next moves in their career. So hats off to you. And I'm thrilled that happened.
Yeah, it's actually been a really nice journey. So, and it's interesting because the person that actually recognized that was a woman president that we had at the time. We've had several, but Ginger was like the first of the many women presidents we'd had at that time. And she said, I think you need to be out so the members can actually see you face to face, because at that time, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have any of this other stuff going on that we do now, that you can actually see a face, and all we had was the phone. All you had was a voice.
And it's so true. I mean, in old-fashioned connecting, there is such value in truly learning to connect that sometimes I worry is lost today. And I know that's something that you put a high value on in the organization.
Yeah, definitely. So I really talk to people on the phone constantly all day. We don't even really use our phones that much to really have a conversation anymore. It's, we do a lot of texting and, email and, a lot of other forms of communication, but usually it's not voice to voice like we're doing today, which is great.
Which is great, which is fun, which is actually fun. It's fun connecting. So that you started getting out, I didn't mean to interrupt the story. So you started getting out, and what happened, because your career has taken this trajectory, and you just, one of the things I admire about you, Kathy, is you kept showing up when opportunity was presented and running with it.
Well, yes, I definitely tried to do that. I didn't realize I was doing it at the time. You never know you're doing these things at the time. And so I was in that role for about 5 years, and then the board of the association wanted to just hire me exclusively. So that's how
Wow.
my own business came about. My mentor, his name was Manny DeTorres. He has passed since then, but he is the one that's really helped me, guide me, has always been in my corner, helped me to grow. And he's the one that said, get your own business. Then what you can do is we're your first client, and they were.
Woohoo.
And exactly, exactly.
Woohoo. All of
And
a sudden, get your own business and we're a client. That is people's dreams.
he actually helped me to do so much. They guided me. He actually helped me to set up my own office, and I was able to get a lot of the furniture donated. So it was actually kind of nice from our corporate members. They actually donated some of the first furniture I ever had, file cabinets and so
That's
forth,
amazing.
and which you really don't, but it's a nonprofit. So they were getting new furniture, and they said that they'd like to, have someone have the furniture if they could use it. So that's how the office actually started. And little by little, I've been in the business for now 31 years, in this particular role for 31 years. So it's been a journey. I've seen so many
I
different
was going to
changes.
say, I bet you have seen so many changes over the years. What are some, technology, of course, but what are some of the things that you have seen change?
Well, the thing I saw change that I think drastically within our entire organization and board is how women have actually thrived into the organization. When I first went in, there were probably only about maybe two or three women on the board. Now I'm at times there could be like three-quarters are women, half are women. It's lots of women presidents. A few years ago was the first time we had a full woman executive board, and
Impressive.
which is
Impressive.
I was actually having a conversation with somebody and saying, it actually is, it happens just because those particular people would like to accelerate a little bit more and give back more. And people only actually go into those board roles. We don't actually choose who we want. We just are looking for people to volunteer. And it just so happens that that's how the succession plan was that those particular years that we had a full woman board, executive board, I should say. So more of the executive leadership.
And so and I have to give you credit, because with the role of more women stepping up, showing up, advancing, you started a women's conference.
We did, and that one is probably about, I'd say maybe 15 years old now. I'm not sure the exact date we actually started. And it was interesting. I had a conversation at one of the international conferences with one of our members, and that's how we started. And we started it as just a 1 day event. Then ended up to be 2 days. And we were doing the 2 day program up until 2019. Of course, COVID hit.
Yeah.
And once that happened, we actually did it as a virtual conference, ran it for 2 years as a virtual conference in a 1 day format. And then we're back. And we're back doing a
Woohoo!
live event. Ivy was one of our guest speakers last year. She did our part of our welcome reception. And that's how I met you.
Yeah, and it was so much fun, and we did something in the welcome reception that you and the committee said, like, we haven't done before. It's like we kept we were doing a lot of interactive questions and prompts and kept moving tables, and all of a sudden it set up the conference that you came back to me and said people day two were engaging because they felt they'd spoken to so many more people than just the normal people on the table the night before.
Exactly. I mean, it wasn't just like, well, because it was the first time people actually were getting together. So we just wanted it to be, let's just make it low key, let people talk, because we haven't actually been able to like give someone a hug, you know, actually have, a drink together or eat together, break bread, as they say.
Exactly.
We really didn't have that opportunity. And then the second year, we decided we definitely wanted to do something a little bit more special and bring in a guest speaker to actually begin the journey. And it's always a journey with this conference.
Isn't it with most conferences? And you're going into your big annual conference in a couple of weeks. Probably around when this is airing, somewhere around that time. A big conference in Las Vegas, the ISM has every year.
That's right. That's right. So we have our big conference. It's going to be at the MGM Grand, and lots of different speakers. I'm sure a lot of it's going to be focused on AI, but
I
and
just came out of like 3 days of conferences, and there were and two different conferences over 3 days, and there was always a session covering AI.
definitely it's just getting there's more and more coming out, and you're going to be seeing even more and more changes from what I'm hearing over the next couple of years. So just be prepared.
So, where do you see the impact? First of all, I have several questions that are floating through my head here. One, I want to take a step back. So, you went out, you started running this, you started your own business, and then how has that shifted and grown over the years? Because what you expected when you said, sure, okay, I'll just do this as a business, and then what transitioned and happened?
Well, it's interesting. So I would say there's like two big points, especially in supply chain and for me. First one was 9/11. So 9/11 happened, and then that's when we noticed a little drop in our membership because the focus actually changed. A lot of businesses went under at that point, and there were a lot of, and then they never even heard of supply chain. I'd say that was the very first time the president actually heard that what is supply chain, and he more or less, and it was President Bush said, "Oh, I have to learn about this." So the second one would be, of course, the pandemic. And
Right.
that's where my business more sprouted because a lot of our associations actually didn't really know how to pivot or what to do during that time frame because everybody was working from home. Well, what I have done and have always done, I've always ran a lot of virtual programs, and then a lot of the chapters started following what we were doing and participating. We became chapter partners together. We had about 15 chapters throughout the US that were participating in our programs. And from that, a lot of them, once they started rebounding and coming back, they really needed support. So they reached out to me to actually help them to get their message out and to do, what I do on a I do it from on a little bit lower scale than I do for the main chapter for New Jersey because that's my home chapter. But I'm there to support them. So I actually work for the Rochester chapter, the Carolinas, Virginia chapter, and I'm starting up with the Denver chapter now.
So all of a sudden, you have this growing business.
I do. Who'd have thought?
Who knew? Who would have thought? Who knew?
I never knew. I never knew, honestly.
And you know what? It goes to a commonly known thought process in sales is when you have a service or product that solves somebody's problem, and you had developed systems and procedures and methodology that solves this, issues. They're like, can we just have Kathy do this? Can Kathy do this? Can Kathy help us? And all of a sudden, you have a growing business.
I do. I do. There were actually many other chapters that wanted my help as well. What I try to do is I try to go to the smaller ones that really are struggling And those are the ones I've been really trying to help and pick up. There is a larger chapter that I work with as well. They have a great board. I mean, all the boards are great. It's great to work with everybody, and it's nice to see uh, how the boards are working together and they are strengthening, their chapter.
So, Kathy, I'd love to ask you, what has surprised you most in this journey?
What has surprised me the most? Hmm. I think there's just so much change out there. And the thing is, my biggest thing is I'm always trying to think of something that's a little bit different, unique. I think that's why the New Jersey chapter has their women's conference. We're the only chapter that actually has a women's conference, but I have noticed that more and more chapters are trying to do women in procurement events, which I think is nice. But it's nice to know we actually started it and continued it even through the pandemic. So it didn't stop us. We continued what our mission, one of our missions. One of the other missions that we're very passionate about is supplier diversity. So next month we're actually doing our annual supplier diversity night where we do I think of that particular, the one we're doing next month is going to be, we're doing industry roundtables, and then we'll
Fun.
have a keynote and a panel discussion. So it's a great way to bring the corporate members and also our diverse suppliers together so they can meet and connect and hopefully do business.
That's innovative. Because yes, you always want to bring your industry leaders and corporate together with diverse suppliers, and everybody's on that mission. But what I love about how you're approaching it is putting it together in a programming that has roundtables, and it has um, an element of development, advancement, and community and connecting.
And the best part is that you're connecting with so many different other chapters throughout your state. So we're connecting with New Jersey Pride. We're connecting with the Hispanic chapter as well. And then there's also the state of New Jersey now has the New Jersey Diverse Business Advisory Council, which is a coalition of different chambers throughout the state of New Jersey. So we're going to be introducing that particular council uh, next month, announcing it because it just developed last year.
So, listeners, I want to just bring a couple of things to light. Um, Kathy is very enmeshed in New Jersey, as well as some of the other chapters in different states. Know this, if this is going on in all these resources in New Jersey, when's the last time you looked in your state to see what resources are there for you?
Definitely.
We're so busy often creating, and I'm a huge creator, always take a breath, take that moment and look at resources, what's already at our fingertips and we don't know about it. Look for it to take a little bit of time and check into it. Don't take days, don't take hours, but you could do a little 30 minutes of Googling and see what resources are out there. Reach out to a few things, see what associations and programs are local to you that are an asset to your organization.
Definitely. And it's a great development for you too. And it will improve on your skill sets, your soft skills as well, and actually helps you as an all-around person.
What have you seen different as far as supply chain in the last several years? Coming out of the pandemic, the initiatives with DEI, et cetera, et cetera. There's been so much, but for your perspective, what are you seeing and where do you see it's going?
Well, actually, it's funny because when our organization first started, we were considered purchasing. Then we went into procurement. So we're still procurement. Now we're actually seeing that it's the overall supply chain. So that's how the focus is now, more of a supply chain from the end to end. And some of the changes have been remarkable because procurement is now on the forefront. They're part of the team now, the upper team, as to they were never really up there before. Years ago, they were not. They weren't always part of the main, you know, board structure. And the CPOs are all up there. They're striving. We have so many. Yeah, I have to say I do know a lot of women CPOs out there now that I have
Share with
not
the
seen.
audience what a CPO is.
CPO would be your Chief Procurement Officer. Okay. So, I've noticed I'm seeing a lot more women in the chief procurement officer role, which is really, really nice. A lot more I'm seeing a lot of opportunities there that and I know there's still some struggles. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. There's going to be some a lot of struggles. There's going to be a lot of people up there, stopping you from getting from one point to another. And that's when you pivot and maybe you find something else because I'm sure there's probably always an opportunity out there. And there are a lot of supply chain roles out there too. It's just finding that right fit is usually the hardest part, or to find the culture, the company culture that fits your persona much better.
And I love that. Finding the organization that has the culture that fits who you are. I think that is a huge, huge piece of information. There is nothing worse than being in an organization, a company, an association with not your peeps.
Definitely, definitely. And I think a lot of people struggle with that.
Absolutely. Kathy, let me ask you, if you were to leave one tip for women leaders coming forward, what would it be?
Don't give up.
Oh, tell me more. Can't help myself there.
Well, I mean, if you have a goal, go for that goal. Or if that goal gets diverted, you know, go in the direction that, you know, your your inner self is telling you. Because, sometimes we change and our focus has changed throughout our career too. So, I mean, if you have a passion in one area, if even if it's in a volunteer capacity, you know, go for that. I think I've always thought that volunteering and being involved in so many different types of organizations, especially when my kids were younger, that's what I was probably in like five or six of them on boards and so forth. But I think it actually just makes you a really well-rounded person, but sometimes it helps you to strive for your goals as you get a little bit older too, because then you can focus sometimes on maybe the niche that you really have. I'm not, what do you think about that, Ivy?
I am always for being involved in volunteer organizations. I try to balance out, life is busy, so I try to pick
Mhm.
one or two and actually get involved in them, as opposed to, everything that comes my way. Like my heart always says, I want to say yes. And I stick to being more involved in one or two, so I could truly find huge value in truly getting to know people who have similar goals and values. And it's that values that usually cross very strongly when you're aligned with the same organization. It's based on the same values, the same, and once your values are aligned, everything else becomes easy.
I totally agree. See, I was more or less in the we call it PTA or home and
Yeah.
school. So I was on that in church and also in scouting. So those are my three core areas that I actually focused on, only because it my children were involved in it as well. But I
Correct.
felt like I was trying to make a little bit better, easier path for my two kids as well.
And I also found like I also, when my kids were in elementary school, I was vice president of the PTA. I was like, hello, of course, working mother owned a business. It's like, yeah, sure, raise your hand. And class parent. And it was, I want to be involved in the policy and how things are run that affects the people who are important to me.
Mhm.
And as my kids have migrated out of schools and I get in the last dozen plus years, probably 15, 20 years, I've gotten involved in other things as they were getting older, and I've watched them get involved in different things. And it forms community. It also forms relationships that end up being beneficial back to my professional career and people want to introduce me to. It's a full circle win.
Oh, it definitely is. It definitely is. And it does. And it really does shape your children too, because they're with you when you're doing most of these things. As as a young parent, they're there with you all the time. They know. I mean, that's how my children are too. So
And then I've
hopefully,
watched my kids get involved as because it was modeled.
hmm that's right. That's right. Exactly. Exactly. That's exactly how I feel. And that's why when you ask me what a piece of advice, go where your heart is. If you feel something, if you feel like a passion for something, you know, maybe you should explore it a little bit.
I love that. Kathy, I can't thank you enough. Kathy and I found this time to do this interview, listeners, between me coming back from conferences, her heading out to her big annual conference. And that is something I'm bringing to light because busy women somehow get things done. And we're really phenomenal with that. And I hope you all honor yourselves around that. Also, Kathy, thank you for coming on and sharing a little bit about procurement and supply chain and an industry that has not been highlighted on her success story before. And, listeners, you want more, you speak up, we will deliver.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll always say, take a moment, take a breath. What was the most impactful piece of this conversation for you? Make a note of that somewhere and then make a decision. What are you going to do with that piece of information that is going to be helpful to your life, your career, and who you are? Thank you for joining us today, Kathy.
Thank you, Ivy.
And listeners, see you next time with more great interviews from Her Success Story.